All right, Chief. You got what, 2 weeks to go from today?
Pretty much today's my last day because I have surgery in the morning. So I might be back light duty for a few days, but today is my last probably work day.
So what's your official, I'm no longer employed?
May 1st.
May 1st.
May 1st will be my first day of retirement.
Yep. So how does that feel after being here for, 35 years now?
Well, first, of course, obviously, it's an anticipated, well-needed rest.
Yeah.
So there's a sense of accomplishment. But there's also, of course, as one would expect, a loss because this job is very meaningful to me and very meaningful to our community and very meaningful for the people that do it. There's a brotherhood, a sisterhood in this profession that's indescribable and unrelatable unless you've done it, and that will be missing, and that will be big for me.
So when you look back on your career, day one, did you ever think that you would be in your shoes right now?
No, day one, I had no intentions of ever trying to promote at all. I thought I would be a police officer for a while. I would go to college part-time, and then I would get what I termed at that time a real job. And even after I fell in love with the job, I still didn't consider promoting even to sergeant. I just, my wife asked me to promote after a shooting incident in Zone 3, a second involved a critical incident at Zone 3. And my friend at another department promoted to sergeant. And so I just tested for sergeant and was able to get promoted.
So take me back to before you ever started working here. I know you grew up in Cobb, but what inspired you to actually come and work here of all the departments you could have chose from in Cobb? Why Cobb Police?
Well, I'll say this. As a young man, back in the 70s, I wanted to be a police officer. A lot of kids did back then. And when I came to Georgia in the early 80s. It was actually during the child murders.
The Atlanta child murders?
Yes, sir. And I came here and I moved to Cobb County. And the Cobb County Police Department looked sharp. They were very professional. And they policed hard, to include policing me when I turned 16. And so...
You like to drive fast cars?
I had a 66 Mustang. It was not exactly remodeled and restored, but it was pretty funny. It had some very, very, very wide mags on the back. It was 9 different colors. It was very loud. And I had a mullet to go along with that. So the police did pull me over a good bit. And so my opinion of Cobb County changed just a little bit when I was young. And so, but I still respected what they did. And when I became 18, 19, 20, and was just trying to make a living, working on Fulton Industrial Boulevard, working in restaurants and things like that, my friend worked at Cobb County Water Department. And I went down and put in an application for the water department and also put in an application for the police department, remembering as a kid how bad I wanted to be a police officer. And I knew what good work they did. And although I got pulled over a pretty good bit by the Cobb County Police Department, I still very much respected them. I had interactions with them for other reasons in my personal life that caused me to really, really, really admire this police department.
So when you joined your rookie year, you were policing alongside people that probably been here from the 60s and 70s, right?
Yes.
That started their career back then. What was that like, policing with people that come from, quite a different generation of policing?
Well, it wasn't that shocking to me because I don't think the generational changes were as significant as they are today. But I can tell you this, when I came into this police department, there was a humbling that if you didn't do yourself, the department would do for you. And so I came in with my mouth shut and my eyes open and my ears open and did my best to do my job quietly. And so when I got to the precinct and I got into FTO and I had my first real sergeant, and especially when I got cut loose and got released from my FTO and went to evening shift with Sergeant Cecil Robinson, was my first WOR sergeant. I had a healthy fear of that sergeant, and he was one of the nicest people in the department. He was a war hero who had a scar all the way down his forehead into his face.
Vietnam veteran?
Yes, sir. And what a great first sergeant to have. I met him. I said, Sergeant, I know I've got a lot to learn. I said, I just want you to know that please, help me along the way and let me know what I'm doing wrong and I'll correct it. And he laughed. He said, you're going to do great. He said, you just relax and be careful and be safe. And that man said that every single day that we worked, for us to be careful and be safe. And that was the main message we got every squad meeting, in addition to some other ones, but that was always the main one with Sergeant Robinson. But still, for about 18 months, I was still, I'll say, afraid of the sergeants and the lieutenants. And I minded my manners for a long time and just did my job and went home at night.
So what year did you join?
I joined in 1990.
So tell me about 1993. That was the year that the very first Cobb County police officer was feloniously killed in the line of duty. Do you remember that day?
I do. I was camping. I was on vacation. I was camping in St. Mary, Georgia. And of course, then we did not have cell phones. And Leslie and I came home in the middle of that vacation. Robbie had worked with us at Precinct 3 and had moved up to Precinct 1 before his death. And of course, I was shocked, as everybody was. And I remember it very well. It was my first police funeral. And it was as you stated, which I would learn then, it was the first officer that we had lost with an assault, as a felonious assault on an officer. We had lost some officers in accidents and things like that. So,
yeah, there was one officer killed in the 60s, John Hood. He was killed in a motor vehicle accident, and then Drew Brown in the 80s was killed also in a motor vehicle accident, but it wasn't until Robbie Ingram got killed was the first time that an officer was basically murdered.
Yes, absolutely.
So did that ever change any aspect in your life? Like, 'cause I know a lot of people say that after somebody in their department gets killed, they have that thought like, maybe this isn't the type of career for me.
No.
Never had that thought?
No. The opposite.
Really?
Yeah. The uniform, the badge, the vest, the flag doesn't mean anything to you until you're hurt for it. And that was the first time I'd experienced anybody that I knew pretty well. And
You knew him pretty well?
Just at the precinct. He was on morning watch, I was on evening shift, and I knew him. We were friends, but we weren't super close friends, but we were friends. And I remember when he went to Precinct 1, but there's so much good that comes from tragedies. And I think probably what came from that for us as young officers in the 90s was a deeper commitment, not, this is not for me. The reality that people give life for the freedoms that we protect and that we also enjoy and that our family enjoys has a very devastating cost sometimes and frequently, but it's always there. It did not motivate me or make me want to leave the force. It probably deepened my commitment. I've never really thought about that question. That's a good question. And I am looking back now at the people that were with us then, and they are still with us now, many of them, after 35, 33, 32 years. The people that experienced Robbie's death in the early 90s, a lot of those people are still here, especially from Zone 3. So, no, it didn't make me want to leave the profession at all. Leslie, my wife, was in the back of a car with our sergeant then, T.R. Alexander, and his wife, Melanie, and their little brand new baby girl, Lauren, at the time. And that's who we rode in the processional with. And to see the citizens saluting, to see the American flags on the side of the road, I've never seen anything like it or experienced anything like it before that. And it just really solidified the meaning of the job for me, I think.
So was it before or after that that you got over to MCS?
I wouldn't go to MCS for another 13 years.
Oh, wow.
I spent a lot of time in uniform, a
Really?
long time in uniform, yes.
Okay. Was there anything in your time in uniform that like sticks out over your career? It's like, that's like when you look back on your career, it's like as an officer, like that was a significant time in your life?
You mean like a call?
Yeah,
or
anything,
something like
anything
that?
in particular?
Yeah, hey, I loved to run tags when I was young. I loved to look for stolen cars and things like that, and that's your goal, is to get somebody that could hurt somebody or harm somebody or is a threat to somebody off the street.
A real bad guy.
A real bad guy. So we'd run tags a lot. Some officers didn't, some did. Those that did sometimes would irritate maybe the officers that didn't on the radio so much. And that's not really what they do anymore with today's technology, but that's what many of us did back in those days. But I did have I thought was a suspicious car in a parking lot of a hotel because it was a nice SUV. The window was down, the driver's window was down, and I thought it was out of place. It was not a very high income area, and it was a pretty nice car. And that car ran the tag on that car, and that was a kidnapped victim from Lancaster, South Carolina. According to the returns, this person was possibly kidnapped and shot. And she had been kidnapped and shot, and she had been taken here to Cobb County, and she was inside a hotel being assaulted. This was hours before her birthday. She would be 48 years old on her birthday. And the individual that had kidnapped her told her, basically, that on your birthday, this will all be over. Basically, he said he was going to kill her on her birthday. We got that individual in custody about an hour before her birthday, and were able to rescue her from inside that hotel.
Mm-hmm.
And she survived. She had a bullet wound through her back. She had been transported hours down here to this hotel from Lancaster, South Carolina, and would not tell us who did it. She was petrified. We told her we had him in custody. She said, it doesn't matter, he'll get out, he'll get out. She would not tell us what happened, and that's the last I saw of her.
Really?
Yes, and she did live, and I know that he got 18 years. He's now, I'm sure, out of prison. But that's probably the most significant call that I got as a patrol officer.
I remember you telling me this story before too, because we joked one day and you said, I never even got a life-saving award for that. But you literally saved that woman's life, just in the nick of time, really.
Yeah, it was a great case, and it was just, I believe, a God thing. I was supposed to be on annual leave that day, and I later read in an article that the church that she went to in Lancaster, South Carolina, was gathered. The people there were gathered, and they were praying for her. And I literally was on annual leave that day. The only reason I came in is because I got a brand new police car that day, and I wanted to go pick it up. And long story short, I ended up staying the whole night.
Yeah.
And that's how that happened.
Yeah. Sometimes you get put in the right place at the right time.
Yep. It was a good one.
Yeah. So talk about like when you first started the technology. You didn't have dash cams, you didn't have body cams, you didn't even have a computer. Everything was handwritten back in those days. I know people like me and my generation that work here probably couldn't even imagine doing this job without those things because we're so used to them now, but you didn't even have those. They didn't even exist when you first started. What was that like?
Well, it was neat. We got body cam. Well, we didn't get body cams until many years later. But the first real significant technology move that we got was dash cams, and that was in the aftermath of Rodney King and some other incidents. And I believe our DUI task force was the first to get them, and I think they got them before there was really any need to get them. They just wanted them for prosecution's sake. But they came, and those were very helpful for us. They helped us prove that some of the citizen complaints that we were getting were false. They helped us prove our cases in court, and really were a great help. MDCs came after that, and for several years we had MDCs in our cars that did not work. So we had jokes about them. They're called MDCs or MDTs, mobile data terminals, and we called them mobile dinner trays because for so long we would just eat off of them instead of do any kind of police work with them. But when they first came into actual use, on the very first day, I was actually going to a domestic dispute that wasn't that, it wasn't a physical assault. But there was a car in front of me, I ran the tag, and it was a wanted subject for aggravated assault on a police officer from Panama City Beach, Florida. And I was able to pull him over and put him in custody and take him to jail. First thing that I did with that MDC. And so it was great to see technology progress as it did.
So you talk about in your career span, technology has changed a lot from the time you first started here to your time as a chief. I know when you first became chief, something that you always like to say with the Real-Time Crime Center was precision policing. Talk about like how this has really become a game changer in law enforcement, where this is now the future of law enforcement is stuff like with the Real-Time Crime Center.
Yeah, I'll tell you how it started. I was a lieutenant, and I was at the FBI Academy in 2007, and a high-ranking individual was there from a small department in New York, and he told me about license plate recognition cameras, which I was not familiar with. And then it wasn't very refined, and it didn't work very well, but it sounded amazing to me because I wouldn't have to run the tags. I could just let the cameras tell me when there was a stolen car or a wanted person. So I started petitioning the chief at that time for license plate recognition cameras, and it took many, many years and a political battle to actually get them on our cars. And we got those. They were pretty effective, but we wouldn't really get what we have now until we got stationary license plate recognition cameras. When I was at Precinct 3 as the captain, we were trying to get a mall to actually dig trenches and install our vendors' LPR cameras in a stationary format at all of the entrances and exits to their mall, because they were a lot of entering autos, a lot of stolen cars, and other crimes that were being committed there, and having those stationary license plate recognition cameras would have been amazing. Of course, they couldn't afford it. You couldn't afford it. It was too much money to dig trenches to get electricity there. You had to figure out how to get it Wi-Fi there at the time. And so we tried to do that with several businesses, and even with a very large and well-funded homeowners association. And it just never worked out until 2018, I think 2019, when we were accidentally met some people from Flock license plate recognition, Flock Safety, and they were able to do a test for us in our most prominent and high crime area in the county since the entire time I've been here. That was very, very successful. We measured crime before and after, and the crime drops were substantial and frankly incredible, meaning not believable. I made them hand pull the stats again to verify the numbers, and they did, and they were correct. That was the beginning of something that I would say laid the foundation for precision policing, because precision policing to me does a few things at once. Number one, it identifies people that can harm our officers and our community automatically and extremely frequently. And we had no idea how many people like that were in our county until we put these stationary LPRs up. And when we did, and we were getting the alerts, it was alarming to see how many stolen cars were passing these cameras, how many wanted people were passing these cameras, how many gang members were passing these cameras. It was disturbing, to be honest. And Precinct 2 is where this was first tested, and the officers kind of figured out how to enforce, because we have limitations on our chase policy, and they did some genius things on how to do that. Later, of course, we had real-time crime centers. We went to New York City. Chief Register sent me and a group of officers up there for a lot of reasons, but one was to see their real-time crime center. But what we learned was that was a millions and millions of dollar project that was not feasible for us to attain.
Yeah, NYPD has a lot more money than Cobb County Police does.
Absolutely, and they built that from scratch. Atlanta had one, a video integration center, back when I was working for the chief at headquarters, the same time that I went to the FBI Academy and learned about license plate recognition. And Atlanta gave me a tour of that. And again, they built that. They made APIs for all the different camera systems that they had in the field. And if the camera system was upgraded, they had to build a new API. It was homemade, very expensive and very cumbersome. But as you know, a young company right here in Atlanta, Flock was also right here in Atlanta, but a young company called Fusus was just starting out very close to us. I read about them, other people read about them, and then we said, hey, can we have a partnership with them as well? So Flock, Fusus, and the Cobb County Police Department partnered on our real-time crime center, and hence came the concept of precision policing, which, again, from a safety standpoint, is incredible. A police officer minding his own business suddenly will be alerted that, hey, there's a wanted person from Florida here that killed somebody in Florida. Please pick this person up. It's incredible. But Fusus added something to that, cameras from our partners in the field. So if we have a high crime complex that wishes to partner with us, we can bring their cameras in. So now, if there's a shooting in that particular complex, we have footage of it immediately. We don't have to wait a couple of days to get the footage to see what the footage shows us. We can get it right then. When citizens call in on 911, they're under pressure. They're going to give us a very loose and inaccurate description, and we have the authority under the law, and we want to capture the individuals that did it, so we will stop people that look similar to that. Unfortunately, a lot of those people didn't do anything wrong.
Yep, and then it become huge news stories of police officers stopping the wrong car, putting somebody on the pavement, and it looks terrible, but in the officer's mind, they're thinking that they're stopping possibly a very dangerous criminal. But from the perspective of the innocent person in their car, they just got abused by the police, and now that leaves a negative mark in their mind probably for the rest of their life about law enforcement.
100%. And imagine being that driver, and if you already have animosity towards the police, because we've had a rough decade or so. It's getting much better now, and I'm glad to see that. But imagine being that person. You could be afraid of the police. You could be angry at the police. And suddenly a police officer stopping you, he's cautious. He has his hand on his gun. This is a recipe for disaster for our police officer and for our community. And so these two in combination with one another, the Real-Time Crime Center and Flock LPR allows us to get a video in minutes that we would not have gotten for days. We can get that. We can actually take pictures, stills, send that to our officers so they can see the actual car. We can get the tag number if the Fusus cameras are set up correctly. Sometimes we can get a tag number from that, but we can always get the tag number from a license plate recognition camera. And we strategically place those so that we can get those tags. So now we're looking for one car. We have pictures of the individuals that were doing the shooting. We have one tag. We have a specific vehicle, one. We can capture that much quicker because as it's going through our county, the Flock LPRs will alert, and it will tell us that's where the car is now. We will stop one car. We'll stop it much faster. Typically, we have a highly improved chance of getting the gun back, which is extremely important for prosecution. Since we're getting them so fast, they're wearing the same clothing that they're wearing in the video where the shooting occurred. It's just overall an amazing thing for safety and for community relations. It's really good for both, and both of those benefit our police officers. So precision policing takes what we used to do where we might make 5 or 6 vehicle stops in the area that loosely resemble something that a citizen called in, down to, hey, we're looking for this car with this tag, with this bumper sticker 4 individuals. One has red pants, one has a black hoodie. 3 of them have handguns. We don't know about the driver. All that information is at our fingertips, and we make one traffic stop. We get those individuals in custody safely. We have all the evidence we need to prosecute the case, and we don't bother anybody that was not involved in the crime at all.
Yeah, it's definitely a game changer, I think. And I'm approaching 10 years that I've been here with the department. So you've been here 35 years. I got 25 more years to go before I'm where you are right now. So imagine what is going to change between now and then in law enforcement. So was there a moment in your career that was like really difficult on you? You know, anything that went through that happened in the history of this department that was hard for you coming through?
Yeah. Most people at the police department know this story because I've told it a few times, and I can tell it better now today because I've told it a few times, but it used to upset me a lot to even tell the story. But it was the death of Steve Reeves and Steve Gilmer was by far the worst thing that happened in our careers. I won't say mine, ours. That was a terrible night and a terrible tragedy for our police department.
So this is the first time we had 2 officers simultaneously killed in the same incident.
Yes, that was. But we had a lot of officers shot, and people don't really recognize and remember that sometimes, but there were multiple officers shot on that and injured in that incident, and it was a terrible tragedy. And for my part, I was off that night and watching the news on a SWAT call out, and when our SWAT team was there, we knew everything was okay. And so I was just watching the news, getting ready to go to sleep. And Leslie and I were in the bed, and we had a 2-year-old boy named Jesse, my oldest son. And right before I turned the news off, the newscast was essentially over, but they interrupted the newscast saying that shots were fired and that there was reports that officers had been shot. So I left Leslie and Jesse at the house and went down to the hospital, which is not what most people did. Most people went to the scene, but I went to the hospital, and all the officers that were wounded and were there. And of course I discovered that 2 were deceased. And that's also where, back then, we didn't have cell phones, as I said earlier, but we had pagers. And the families started coming. You know, the SWAT families, the patrol officers' families started coming because nobody knew who had been shot. And by this time, the news was confirming that officers were shot and being transported to the hospital. And so they came with their children, and me and Officer Drew Marquetta was there. He would later be a sergeant. And, of course, we had to tell the families of both Steve Reeves and Steve Gilmer that their husband, father were dead, and that they had died that night. And that was, of course, by far the toughest thing I'd ever done as a police officer. I was a sergeant at the time, and it was a hard night on everybody. My wife and my baby boy Jesse came like 2 o'clock in the morning. We were up all night. Captain Mike Payne said a prayer with all the officers a little later in the night, and he thanked God. And I couldn't understand that at the time. But he kept talking, and I understood by the end of the prayer. He thanked God for Steve and Steve and for the amazing work that they had done in their careers, especially with the critical incidents that they had been involved in. And so, again, it was a tragedy and a hard night. I've done 3 death notifications in my whole career. I've been very lucky. Many officers have to do those so routinely, but I've only had to do 3. One was on a car accident to some parents, and that was terrible. And then the other two were with the Reeves family and the Gilmer family. So
Didn't one of them have a young daughter, like a baby?
Nikki, yes. Nikki, and then, of course, Beth had 3 boys. I would later have 2 more boys, and the boys were there, and Nikki was a baby. But over the years, at the candlelight vigil, I would avoid them because I thought I would get pretty upset, and I avoided them for many, 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 many years, and probably about 8 or 9 years ago, I started talking to them, and really talked to Nikki a lot and Alyssa, and it's a great thing to see them now, and great to see the Reeves family. I know at least one of them's in law enforcement.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
One of their kids are?
Yep. So,
Wow.
Yep. And so, just an honor to have served with both of those men, and a tragedy, but again, the reason that you love this job so much is because people will do that for complete strangers, and we will do it for each other. And that's the greatness of the job. The greatness of the job is so tied to the tragedy of the job.
Yeah.
Somehow. So that would definitely be the hardest, and not far behind that would be Gillespie and Irvin just a few years ago when I was a new chief, and Sheriff Owens was not that much of a tenured sheriff at the time. So, yeah.
Yeah, I know based on some of the stuff that I read about that incident, that kind of changed. That was like national news, right? Like it kind of changed how SWAT teams across the country operated. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely.
So what changed? What specifically did that incident change nationally?
Well, I can speak more. I am definitely not a special teams guy. I was never on the SWAT team. I was in narcotics a couple of times. Not my specialty, and I would probably defer to somebody that's a little bit smarter to answer that. But I'll tell you, here for us, it doubled the size of our SWAT team. It really helped us to coordinate better with the sheriff's office, and we really analyzed heavily what went wrong in that engagement. And there were some things that we changed, and I think that has also been a benefit. And I think we have become a leader across this nation, and we have seen incredible actions from our SWAT team and the Viper team on some of these critical incidents, not to mention CNT and all the others that are so integral in all of this. But they've had some truly amazing hostage rescues and other things like that many teams don't see, and frankly, I haven't seen much in my career at all. So they've become a definite leader. NTOA, they taught nationally some of the things, not only that we learned from that incident, but how we have done and succeeded in incidents after that. So unbelievable changes came, at least at our level, that I noticed, that were really, really good outcomes for that.
Yeah, so fast forward, we'll wrap this up here soon. You're at 30 years, that's when most people decide to retire, or you're either a major or a deputy chief at this point. What made you want to keep going? Like, was it your goal to be the chief one day, or you just loved the job so much you want to stick around?
There were a lot of reasons why I did not retire at 30 years. I was a deputy chief, and I was a relatively new deputy chief, and I was a deputy chief over what I call all the fun stuff. And all the fun stuff I didn't know much about. Like I told you a minute ago, I went on SWAT, but I was over SWAT, which is kind of a little bit odd, and I had a lot to learn. I was over homicide. I was never in homicide. I was over STEP and motors. I was over narcotics and intelligence and the gang task force, and all that was very, very, very fun for me to learn and for me to watch, because they do amazing work. Children's. have not been asked to go to children's, but it's one of the things that would have been a struggle for me to go do.
Same.
Yes.
I don't think I could ever do that job.
And to just get a taste of what they do is disturbing. But again, the respect I have for the people that do that work, and to be honest, I learned so much about STEP. I've done 3 death notifications in my life. Like I told you, they were terrible, terrible, especially the 2 that I described in detail. And this team does them so routinely to family after family after family. And so I have such a stronger appreciation for units like STEP. Motors does some stuff that I didn't quite recognize till I was over them. Children's, homicide, everybody, the gang unit. Narcotics I appreciated from day one because I always wanted to do it as a kid. And so that was something that was a dream that I got to actually live out.
Did you get to do undercover stuff, or were you on the Cobra side?
I was on the Cobra side, but I also did undercover stuff because when I got there, they said, wow, he'd be a great crackhead. And so I went home, put on a blue tank top, a Braves cap, and I came and I bought crack cocaine. If not my first night, it was probably my second night. So, yeah, I did a little dual action. Not much,
Yeah.
but a little bit. So it was a blast. But as a deputy chief, I love what we do, and I love the people. And to be honest, I want to preserve the integrity of this department. What I've seen for 3.5 decades is nothing but great things. I've seen some bad stuff, don't get me wrong. But what I'm saying is I really wanted to protect the future of the department. And I wasn't sure who was going to be the chief. And I put in for chief because I cared about the department and felt like I could carry on the good traditions of this department and the good character of this department. And I had a few things I would like to see done that I tried to get done as a deputy chief but wasn't successful. And so I wanted to finish a few things. And so I put in for chief for that reason. And
have you since been able to complete those things that you wanted to complete earlier?
Most of them, yeah. There's always more stuff you'd like to do. I wish I would have gotten. We're doing great in hiring and good in retention. However, I wish I could have seen the recruits hit the road that will be hitting the road in about 2 months, because we should be caught up then, and we should actually gain some officers in the field and fill these beats for these patrol officers who need the help. They are shorthanded. We have open beats. And so it would have been nice to see that come to fruition, but
yeah.
we have so many recruits in FTO now, in training now, that will happen. Mental wellness, it looks like we've crossed the bar on that, and we've got some mental wellness programs in place that are solid. And then for sure, for the safety of our officers physically and for the community trust, our DT program, that training revised and improved. I think that was really what I wanted to do as a deputy chief. It just couldn't happen at that time, but we're able to do that with our shift overlap. It allows us to actually practice on duty, and I believe that is probably the thing I was most excited about implementing. I had seen people in the field kind of pave the way on it, and so I modeled it after what I saw other departments do, but also what some of the officers here were showing me and had shown was successful. And so that's probably the one I'm most excited about as far as operationally and good for our department. And I think it's really good, and I hope it continues to grow.
I think that's what a lot of people, and like even myself included, are kind of like what you mentioned earlier, kind of nervous about, is like the unknown of, who are they going to hire to replace you? We're a big department. In my career, in the 10 years I've been here, pretty much every chief that's come through has been either a current employee of the department or were at once, an employee here. So the thought of possibility of somebody external coming in that's never worked here is kind of a scary thing. So I can imagine when you were the deputy chief wanting to continue the culture of the department and at least extend it a few more years during your tenure here was a very easy transition. So I know I gratefully appreciate you working and staying and becoming the next chief. I've very much enjoyed working alongside you. But one of the last questions I want to ask is, what does your legacy look like when you look back on your career here? Before you answer that, let me check, make sure this is working. Yeah, we're good.
Well, that's a great question that I have not pondered, so I don't know if I have an answer. And I think the legacy, that's in people's minds. So it probably depends on your interpretation of my work over the last 3 years. I didn't stay a decade as the chief, so it might be a little bit more minimal than somebody that spent more time as chief. But I don't know. I hope that the spirit of what we do as police officers is what I leave, the goodness that we do. That I hope I leave the officers and the people who are still in the field doing the important work with how many opportunities I believe they have that they don't really recognize. And I'll give you the tiniest example. We can make somebody's day by making a traffic stop and being nice. And I'm not saying don't write them a ticket. I'm just saying being nice, smile.
Yeah, it's like Patrick Swayze in Roadhouse. Be nice.
There you go. Okay,
nice.
Exactly. But if you arrest a young man and you take him to jail in silence, that's great. Man, we got somebody that needed to go to jail in custody. That's great. But what's better is to talk to the young man.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's going to change his opinion a little bit about the police, which will make that next interaction with him better, maybe not. You might breathe some hope into somebody that hasn't had a lot of hope their whole life. I like people to do something good for our department with their spare time. And I understand people are short-handed, you know, and so I don't want them to go out and be so proactive that they're in danger or their beat partner's in danger. But as we get restocked and we're able to run a tag, you know, do some proactive policing, you don't know when you're going to get that tag that is something amazing. We've got so many videos that you've put together on doing that through our technology and the fine work of our police officers. Sometimes it's not technology, it's pure instinct of these officers, noticing suspicious behavior, and they get very violent and dangerous people off the streets. I want them to always recognize how powerful that is, both of those things, policing, putting people in jail that need to be in jail and protecting our citizens, but also seeing, I think, a little bit deeper side that I didn't see for many, many years, which is when you lock an individual up and they say thank you to you, that's a good day to me. And I understand there's a time when I want our officers to be safe first, and that's the only thing I want them to worry about. I'm not talking about being Mr. Nice Guy when there's a risk to your safety. I'm talking about being a good person, and that's why we ask everybody, why are you here, in their interviews. And we always get good answers or they don't get hired. And I see so much good in our police officers that most people don't see. And most of these officers will not take pictures when they're giving stickers out to little kids because they don't want the pictures. They're not doing it for that reason.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing it because they care about the little community that they're sworn to protect that night for that 10-hour shift in that little section of Cobb County that God gave them to protect. They do it out of that. And I want them to hold on to that and realize how much power there is with their free time, how much power there is with their words, how much power there is with their handcuffs. And we have a great job. It's a tough, tough job. But if I could leave that legacy with our officers and with this department and the importance of being honest and accountable to ourselves, that is the legacy I would want. Because if we're accountable to ourselves, We never have to worry about that outside chief coming in here
Yeah.
and doing anything different than we do because we already have our stuff together. For the community, I will say it this way. When we lost the 2 deputies in 22, we were in the press conference, Sheriff Owens and I were, and the media asked this: what can we do to honor these 2 officers? Sheriff Owens answered. I did not answer because it wasn't directed towards me. But what I thought and what hit my head first was, this is sad to say, it's too late. You honor the officers while they are still here in that uniform doing their job, risking their life for us, for my wife and my kids, and for every community member that we serve. I would ask our citizens, and they do support us so much. Our political structure, like our Board of Commissioners, has supported me and our department so much. We have it so good in Cobb County. Honor them while they're here because you get dividends back with that. You get officers that will risk their life for you. They'll police when they're supposed to police. They won't be afraid to police. They get patted on the back. Just a little thank you is all it takes. Those 2 legacies, I think, is what I'd like to leave. One with the officers and the people that have worked so hard to lead this department, and one with the community.
So one last thing before we end this is, do you have one final message that you want to send to the troops before you retire?
Sure. Number 1, by far, be safe. Go home in the same shape that you came to work. Protect yourself, slow down, wait for backup. Silent approach, park a few houses down. They know the little things that you got to keep in the front of your mind to be safe. Be physically safe first. Protect each other. Protect our community. And always remember that we have to have the trust of our community, and that is earned through simple character, just through character, just for being good people. And those basic things, be safe, do the right thing, and work hard. Those 3 basic principles that I think we reiterate very well here. And the last thing I would say is an absolute big, giant thank you, because today's police officers police more frequently and better than we did. And a lot of that's technology, but a lot of that is in here. And our civilians are amazing at helping us do that. I had a wonderful 35-year career. I had an easy 3-year ride as chief, and I was carried by the men and women, both civilian and sworn, who serve in this department in the trenches where it counts. So a big thank you to everyone who has done that.
Well, Chief, on behalf of all the officers here, I just want to say thank you for your 35-year career. You have more than earned your retirement, so I wish you all the best in all the years that you have going forward. So I hope you enjoy it, and you know that, even though you're leaving, this is always going to be part of your home, and I'm sure you're more than welcome to come back anytime you would like. So
Aaron,
again, sir, thank you very
Aaron.
much.
I appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
Appreciate it.